Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the vault. Trust Christian own, not to control everything. Just want to thank everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. Always appreciate everybody that tunes in live, listens in the replay. This is the vault, episode 623, 501c3 versus 508c1a. And so we're definitely thankful that we can do this episode. We appreciate everybody that tunes in live, listens in the replay. This is a per the trustee request. Just bear with us. We definitely thank everybody that is actually coming to the workshop. It's on the screen. Ticket price with Brent, with Tiffany, with Dr. Bay. Very well, we don't want to call it small, but it is, and that's not hundreds of people. So we are keeping it under 100, and we're focused on helping a few people get some things done with Dr. Bay, as well as a legacy blueprint. Going to be going over the policies, going to be going over trusteeship, going to be going over foundation, and even this episode, ladies and gentlemen. This episode is to address the environment families say or individuals say they looking to endeavor in when they enter into private. Now, traditionally, people's faith is private, so it's not public. So we're going to do our best not to make it sound a certain way in this particular episode to our traditional listening audience. So thank the traditional listeners, repeat listeners, thank the new listeners for bearing with us. Because we're going to go somewhere with this particular episode and do our best to share a value with the individuals and families that are listening. So a lot of families will kind of say, oh, I want to be in charity. Particularly, think about it, if you're going to go charity, are you going 501c3? What purpose are you going 501c3 over at the vault? It's for tax exempt status, ladies and gentlemen. It is simple as that. So a lot of the families that come over to the vault understand that the charities have that benefit, and that's traditionally why most of the families are engaged in them. In the traditional term called a charity, right? So recently we had a trustee or an individual bring to the vault attention of this particular entity called a 508c1a. Now, this isn't legal advice or financial advice, but we're sitting here having a conversation with the public about these things that we're exposed to, and someone will come to the vote and say, okay, well, what about a 508c1a? Well, look, that's like saying, is there a such thing as a B corporation? There is a such thing as a B corporation. But how many people know how to set up a B corporation? Not many. Very easy to go on the internet and even yourself to go create a regular corporation. So we get into these so-called new age entities or derivatives. Oh, this 508c1a. You're going to say, okay, well, this is a faith-based organization. Let's look at it. We've had trustees and individuals bring this to consultations for many times. People at the vault that are recurring listeners know that when we talk about these things, we're talking about them traditionally from the perspective that we've had trustees or a consultation. So this is based off of that, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, if this entity with the 508c18 is a faith-based organization, your faith is supposed to be private. Someone wants to say, okay, well, what is it? Is it private? From what we're aware of, it's not. Is it a ministry? No, it's an organization. See how that's different? These are the details that we were going over and gonna have to go over with this particular individual. Oh well, why would you want to be a 501c3? Ladies and gentlemen, the largest organizations in the world are 501c3s. They want to do business with other 501c3s. This is the reality. So when we talk about the 5%, there's a benefit to the 5% that the foundations have to give away. They give it away to other entities that they know aren't going to be a compromise to their endeavor. You say, oh, what about 508? C18, can that get it? It's still a charity. It's still faith based. Don't some of these 501c3s give to faith based organizations? Yes, they do. They also are given in a very specific way. So we get to this topic of, okay, should we go faith or should we go state designation? State designation, what does state designation mean? It's exempt. That's it. Doesn't mean you can see the books. The largest foundations are operating internationally. Gov's not going in there messing with those entities, partially because they're under a legal auspice of a charity. They want to know that it's filing correctly. From what we've seen, from our experience, someone comes to the table and says, okay, need you to check out this new designation, this new style of entity. Tell me if the biggest and the best are operating out of this. Someone says, "Oh, I don't want to use my social." First, that's your first mistake. You said my social. You have socials. See, trustees at the vault are aware of where restricted signatures are. So you're going to engage with these other sectors now because you want to protect what interest? See, do you have an interest in the charity, or are you just a manager of the estate? See, most people aren't really ready to manage a dead person's estate. Because if you manage the dead person's estate, why would people not manage their current legal estate like that? That's traditional. Why? Because they're not educated on pretty much estate planning, how to speak about it, how to work and do things of that nature. It's always a learning progress. Even if you don't go, it's almost like, okay, so there's levels to it. You got the ones that know the formal education, you got the ones that know the street about how to manage a family estate. It's not, and a lot of great ones may have made the money, but they still built a team. Nevertheless, in the private estate sector or the estate sector for their family estate to be perpetuated for generations. So even if you just make the money and you don't want to manage it, you still you're still going to be in a position where you have to build a team. Simple as that. So they got the team that's going to say, okay, what's the best designation to have? Now, once again, the vault, we are very specific, we're very niche. A lot of the organizations that we sit in a room with are 501c3s. They're going to give the other 501c3s. That's just what it is. We're not here to be upset about it. We're not here to justify it. We're just here to speak on it in a way in which it comes from experience, ladies and gentlemen, based off of that environment. That's just the basic designation. You don't really hear about a lot of other derivatives of any other derivative in environments, specifically when it comes to private family foundations, because they're going to be larger foundations from somebody that's made substantial money and they're putting it in the foundation. Now, if it's a private foundation, even more specific, even more niche, not going to be traditionally in the public. Uh, Once again, going to be a once again private foundation. So the easiest ones to look at that's a private family foundation is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. If you want to know what's one of the greatest examples of wealth transfer into the private from the public, from a public company having public shares, to him diluting himself and him putting himself in a position where the foundation owns his shares in the company, which you think about it, how could you continue to walk forward in your life knowing that someone else can say, I can put a charity in place to take the salary? And you're in the same position supposedly as an entrepreneur or a business person or an investor. You didn't put your charity in place. He put his charity in place at Microsoft to be the shareholder of his shares. He just assigned his shares over. Did you assign your shares over? Are you aware how to assign your shares over? These are things that we can engage in with your team. Your team, whether it is your legal professional, whether it is your accountant, you can engage with them and say, hey, I want to be in this position where there is a charitable entity, quote unquote. We could, once again, whether it's 501c3 status, is not legal advice, financial advice, but it is something where you can walk in and say, hey, I want to look at this to see if it's more beneficial. Bill did it. He didn't do it right away. He didn't have the Bill and Melinda Gates right away, foundation right away. And when you hear his protege Zuckerberg come out and do the same thing and say, hey, I'm going to dilute myself as the Facebook shareholder, and I'm going to put myself in a position where the Zuckerberg Foundation is the largest shareholder. But once again, he's doing it through 501c3. You guys can go look that up on the internet. 508c1a. These are things that, sure, we're not saying that you can't do it. It's clearly got a designation. Is it superior to the Bill and Melinda Gates 501c3 status? It's what status is it about? Because the 501c3 tax exempt status. What's the 508c1a? Is that structured as where it has to give away the 5%? Think about it. If the one that bills in has to give away 5%, and you don't know if the 508 has to give away 5%, isn't it best to be in an environment where we literally are in an environment where Bill Gates possibly has to give us part of the foundation's income? Why? Because it has to. It has to give away 5% of the money every single year to another charitable entity. So if you're in that side of the pool swimming with him, it's likely that you can get some money. Whereas the 508, this particular individual that came to us, it doesn't seem that as if you want a private family foundation. You want to be in what is called a faith-based foundation, a faith-based organization. Simple as that. We're aware of that. We're aware of how families operate out here. When we share with families that all the families previous to this one call recently, literally all the families are aware of something very, very simple, which is a status, a designation, and they verified it through professionals, because it's not a one man sport, it's a team sport. So yes, through their tax professional, through their accountant, quote unquote, through their enrolled agent, they were able to extract information. They're not doing things blindly. They're able to walk in an environment. Someone asked us the other day, they were inquiring about working with us. They said, well, do you have someone to work with the trustees after they're in trusteeship, after the initial tax filing and things of that nature? Of course, it's a resource. You have to continuously educate yourself and get around the environment, get into the environments that we talk about that have high net worth investors in them. We talk about that. We work with them. That's why we continue to do the workshop. We brought in different style of senior trustees to come speak. Even the trustee that we just brought in, uh, Brent, and we have Brent coming back to this workshop. Brent has his own private plane. Now, that's not something to say, oh man, you should tell the internet that. Well, Brent's private. So, once again, private plane. For all the ones that say, oh, I got to know how to do this and I got to know how to do that, many want to be private. It's for a few. You all can see that being in an environment where you have people that are able to be in that much control of their life, where they're able to fry privately and be in control. And we're talking about the same system. We're talking about the same structure. We're talking about the same mentality. Talking about the same everything. Brent's putting everything to work that we're talking about. Trusteeship, foundationship, 501c3 versus 508c. What is it? 508c1a. One says tax exempt, the other says just make sure that we're faith based recognized. That's what you're focused on? See, people do things for strategic purposes. We're not even saying don't have both. That's another thing. Think about the value of having both. But there is no value when people don't see the value in training, knowing. Because it's different when you know something. When people want to walk into things blindly and just try and shoot from the hip, that's when things can be challenging. When you have someone guiding you, like trustee training is, and maybe there's other programs out there like that. But from what we're aware of, there's not too many. The vault does trustee training. You're trained in trusteeship. There's four do's and four don'ts in the foundation that we work with trustees in. They're in the code. We show you. They sit there with it. They load the code. These are the basics, ladies and gentlemen. People say, "Oh man, these entities that are 501c3s are under the government." No, they're not. You think the Pilgrim litigation, some of the biggest foundations in the United States, are under the gov? They're not. They're separate. Oh, but the church that I went to, it shut down during, during the wild time, the pandemic time. Okay. Eh, Is it getting an election or is it getting a status to stay open and operate as a business and things of that nature? See, 501c3 is just a designation for trustees and trustee training because they want the status. They need to add that to their portfolio. They do add it to their portfolio because it's a business move. It's not a faith based move, it's a business move. They're doing it for business purposes. It's not for faith. Do you see the difference? And this is how the state gets you because they didn't ask you for your faith. But somehow people wanted to reveal their faith to the state. That could be a form of an act of treason to your own family and a conflict of interest to your own family. Why? Because the state doesn't have a emotion. The state doesn't have a heart. It's an institution. It's a hard piece of metal. It's a piece of paper. So in the institution, when you talk about commercial veli and commercial contracts, the 501c3, the designation, the status, that's business, not personal. It's business, not faith. See how easy it is for us to talk about this? Because some people think they're going to come to the vault and talk to the vault as if they sit in the room with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They're not. We sit in the room with those type of foundations. And you're giving to other foundations, not to faith-based organizations like that. And we're not saying that they're not. We want to be clear. That can sound a little like, oh, they don't do it at all. You got to understand that they're not having to do it to a 501(a) or 508c. 501c3s have to give that 5% to another charity. Now, some people can say, oh, you're speaking on it as if you're the authority. Even if we share with you the beginning so you can further do your research, so we say, okay, you can give, you have to give to a charity. Sure, there are other rules to that. So it encourages you to call and you can get the further answer to it. But that initial question, even if you were to call and verify that question, you can verify that question that that's what's supposed to happen because that's what comes from experience. Oh no, but I don't know. It's one of those things, ladies and gentlemen. You got trustee training and you got the internet. Huh? And we're gonna position ourselves continuously as a moat of education and training, and not as some what they got. They out here selling trust. They selling trust. They selling you this. They selling you that. Or are you selling training? Training. People pay to go to college. People pay for continuing education. There's no difference in the family estate knuckling up and saying, okay, we got to come together and we're going to learn some information together. And it's private and it's alternative and it's very niche. And remember, it's 1% information. So it's not going to be too many college classes for it. It's just really not. And whether you guys know it or not, there are college classes. We're aware of them. We're very aware of them. and they're held at colleges. And some of the families that we work with, they pay for classes at colleges, and we know the college that they're recruiting from. We know exactly the college that some billionaire families that we know that are recruiting talent from. They have an endowment at the school specifically. This is a over $20 billion organization. They are an investment firm, and because they're an investment firm and they're managing other families' money, they are recruiting from a specific college, and we're very aware of it. And they hold a class at the college, but that we know that they're specifically doing further investments just based off of that alone. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, these are strategic business moves, not faith moves, not your religious moves. So people are upset what they say. Everything's a tax trust, Christian, in the vault. Everything's a tax. But then what happens when you step in an environment and it's tax exempt, and you get the stamp and you get the approval, and they give you a letter so you can give everybody else that you talk to about the letter of the deduction. It's just various different ways, ladies and gentlemen, to get things done. Some people say, "Oh, do I need a designation?" Well, if you're not sitting in the room with those organizations that have that designation, you probably won't need it. But if you're in the environment with those organizations that have to give 5% away to each other, all you gotta do is open up your pocketbook. All you got here you go. Say, okay, oh, Trust Christian, you made that sound like this and that. Okay, first of all, if you have a charity, and this is where people say, oh, I have to have a grant writer. This is what they say. I have to find a grant writer, Christian. I have to find a grant writer, Trust Christian. Okay, so if you have, no, we're talking about the designation 501c3 foundation trustees that have gone through. Trustees, the reason why you haven't gotten the money is because you didn't ask it for the money. The Google, we'll give you an example. We're not trying to we're doing our best not to name drop foundations, because you can go and Google list of foundations, large foundations. You can also pull up their tax return and you can see what organizations they give money to. Then sometimes these filings are pretty big, but you can still find out the actual firms that they gave money to, the causes that they gave money to. Not only that, there's a local foundation chamber where you guys are at. There's foundations, other charities. You get a list. Now, now you think about this. We're talking about it from the private family foundation perspective as an investment. They invest. They're not just a tax exempt organization. They invest. The endowment with Harvard, which is a 501c3 charity, invests in real estate. It invests. It invests in hard assets. This is where when we would deal with trustees, we let them know there are complex assets. That's literally the term. It's called a complex asset. So you want to get around individuals that understand what a complex asset is, especially in a charitable environment. Why? Because it's not as easy to say, oh, we can invest in this and invest in that when you're doing it from a charitable perspective. So when we talk about, oh, charity or quote unquote 501c3, it's a designation for the family estate. Why would the state have more power than the family? They shouldn't, right? So then they don't. It's private. It's just getting an election for a status. So families can have that status a part of their portfolio. Some people want a different type of status though. So we appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening, replay. Always appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening, replay. feel free to reach out. Christian at trustchristian.com. We got the workshop coming up in Chicago. Christian at trustchristian.com. Peace and joy. Thank you all so much for tuning in live this replay. Definitely, we're actually opening it up for questions here in the chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to type into the chat where you listen to live, where you listen to replay from. Any questions that you have, we're welcoming and open to any questions that you all may have. Feel free, anybody type into the chat. Feel free to hit the like, subscribe. Feel free to reach out Christian at trustchristian.com. Going to the workshop in Chicago. Definitely like for it to be warm, but we know what time of the year it is, so just going to do our best to have the best trip. Everybody that's on their way there, enjoy your travels, safe travels, be prepared for a great time, educational session, and moving forward from there. But this is a topic, once again, ladies and gentlemen. We sit in a room with large foundations, and they're doing very basic filings because uh, remember, it's about mentorship. So Zuckerberg is mentored or was mentored by Bill Gates for a reason because he understands the value of having a mentor and who was not or one at one point one of the richest people in the world. So if you want to be one of the richest people in the world, if you had the opportunity, if they were second in the top five, why would you not talk to them? So he talked to them, he found out how to get things done, and now you see his organization has done buyouts, acquisitions, and in turn, they're leveraged. They have three or four companies that are in their portfolio that it doesn't matter about quote unquote Facebook. Facebook could be a up or down website, but nevertheless, in its portfolio, it has another hot trending website app called uh, uh, first of all, IG's in the United States, but internationally is WhatsApp. So in their portfolio, they have some of the largest networks of contacts in the world. And so, uh, interesting, to see how someone wouldn't want to position themselves around other wealthier people and get the information that they need to actually be successful in life. It just comes from getting around more wealthier people to understand the vehicles that they're operating. If somebody's telling, "Hey, I'm driving a Rolls Royce as a Grand Touring car and just cruising around," there's cruising Grand Touring cars, ladies and gentlemen. That's how it works. There's cruising Grand Touring cars. So it's great timing for the 501c's topic. Definitely, definitely a great time for this topic right here because this is one of those things. They gonna get to the end of the year, they think they're gonna put some money into something, and this, that, and the third, and interesting, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate everybody for tuning live, listening to the replay. Thank you for tuning live, listening to the replay. Christian at trustchristian.com. Once again, it's Christian at trustchristian.com for trustee training, consultation, workshop training. Look forward to hearing from you. Peace and joy.